I think that our culture is just getting it now. Our culture is just catching up to the Ramones. Even though they had such a simplistic way of approaching things, they were light years ahead of their time. I hear stuff on the radio now, your Blink 182s and your whatevers. I mean, there's so many bands that sound like them these days. I listen to that stuff and I think, wow, if the Ramones came out now, if the first Ramones album came out now, they would be the biggest thing on the planet. But it wasn't that way. They were innovators, and they had to come out and do it first, and it just took people 25 odd years to actually get it. I think Joey was a really, really great lyricist, and he had a really, really great sense of melody that just sucked you in. They had great pop sensibilities. I mean, Johnny told me himself they wanted to be the Bay City Rollers, which I thought, when I heard that, was the greatest thing in the world. His style of playing guitar was so monumental. I mean, if he didn't play guitar like that, I don't know if Metallica would have sounded like Metallica in 1983. I love their music. I love what they represent. I wanted to be involved because I just wanted to show the world how important the Ramones were to us, as a band and as young musicians. I wanted to give something back because they gave me and my band so much. They opened up a lot of possibilities that I didn't knew existed in my head when I was younger. You know, I did not look like Robert Plant. I wasn't as flamboyant as Jimi Hendrix. I wasn't cool as Joe Perry. I didn't play guitar like Van Halen. I was a young musician, yeah, and I wanted to be like my idols, but physically and personally was not like them, and I knew that. And there was some question in my mind whether I would, my personality and my looks or whatever. There was some question on whether I had what it took by those standards. The Ramones shattered all those standards. There were no standards after the Ramones. All you had to do is just be yourself. And that opened up so many possibilities in my head. It gave me a lot of self-esteem when I needed it and confidence.
The Ramones were a breath of fresh air in a decade filled with BO. Now, the Ramones were the greatest band ever. I mean, they were the spark that started a musical revolution. I mean, I could say that I wouldn't be in a band if it wasn't for the Ramones. That's for sure. And when I was growing up, I liked music a lot, but just the stuff that was out there, it was impossible to play. It was Kansas, it was Genesis, it was prog rock, it was awful. And the Ramones were the ones that tore the walls down and all of that. They made music fun again. They made people realize that anyone could go out and play music. They made it accessible to young people again, I think, and that was what was one of the really important things about the Ramones. I remember talking to Biafra, my friend in the Dead Kennedys, and he said that he went to go see him on one of their first tours, which was like 75 or 76, I think, and they went around and played the entire country, just little dive bars, and they made such an impression on every town that they played that Biafra was telling me that literally within a month there was 5 bands that had started in every town after they had played at because they were just that inspiring. People were like, oh wow, I can go out and start a band too and have a great time and have fun with it and stuff. So I think that you know, that as much as anything else shows how much they started the whole thing, not just on a media level or a hype level, but on a real ground roots. We're going to go out and play and really inspire people. We decided to cover I Want to Be Sedated, which is one of my favorite songs, probably the best known. Everyone in the band loved the song. When it came time to do a Ramones cover, that was just kind of the natural choice, and so we did it, and it was a lot of fun. We just kind of did it more or less faithful to the original. We weren't really trying to make it anything else. I think that the one thing maybe that's a shame about the Ramones is that they never got the respect or the success that they deserved at the time that they were a band. I think they always kind of struggled and kind of were always just under the radar. And they had so many great songs, from all the ones that are on the record to We Want the Airwaves, and all the way through to Pet Sematary and all that stuff. They had some really, really big songs, but just I think that the world wasn't ready for the Ramones the way they would be today. I think there was just radio wasn't the same place. They were ahead of their time is what it really was. So it's great to see all this happening. I think that what's going on now in music and popular culture and the way things are, the way there's a little bit of punk in everybody nowadays, I think is really goes back to the Ramones, I think, starting that whole thing off.
It would feel weird to just sit there and give them compliments, but I think they really are one of the greatest American bands to ever happen, and what they did and the feelings they generated, go on and on and on and on. And I don't walk down Hollywood Boulevard a day without seeing somebody being affected by the Ramones, whether the way they're dressing or they're acting or whatever. It's just a good thing that they injected into our atmosphere that it's still going strong.
The first thing that came to mind was the fact that Paul Ramone was Paul McCartney's pseudonym when in the '60s, which is where they got the name from. And to me, their songs have that same kind of perfection that the Beatles songs have, where you just couldn't imagine them being any more perfect. They're just ultimately perfect, So not that many bands have done songs that are of that level of perfection as the Ramones or the Beatles. I put them, in the same category in that way.
I get a feeling when you say Ramones. I get a feeling that reminds me a lot of one of my favorite eras of childhood, which was the late '70s and the early '80s, of going to clubs and dancing and just feeling free, and seeing all these hot little girls listening to Ramones records and wearing Ramones shirts and having Ramones haircuts, and it's just a good feeling. And our producer Rick Rubin always says that the second greatest band of all time is the Ramones, after only
The Beatles.
But then we had a discussion.
Yeah, Rick Rubin actually was the one who was really pushing us into that direction of doing one that wasn't a version that sounded like the Ramones, to do it our own way and to make it into our own song. And he had some Neil Young song he was using as an example or something.
Did he?
Remember that?
He had some example. What were the two songs? It was Havana Fair and what else?
Yeah, me just racking my head of every Ramones song, because it's always been a habit of mine to walk around just singing punk songs slowly and with maybe more melody than the originals have. And for me, and I thought that the best that it was either Havana Affair was it one that really could go that way, or Texas Chainsaw Massacre, just called Chainsaw. I thought we could do like a doo-wop version of that.
Chainsaw.
But Anthony didn't like the lyrics as much.
I just didn't feel as attracted to singing them. I saw them in Finland, and I guess it was 1987, and you know, they were big around the world, and people were pretty crazy for this band, you know, because the lyrics didn't matter if you spoke English or not, the lyrics still worked, you know. And so we were sort of in the middle of this giant outdoor festival bill, and we played our show, and we played a good show. And the Ramones were headlining, and we were pretty excited about that because we heard them rehearsing earlier in the day. They actually played the entire set in this tiny little concrete bunker, you know, as if I guess that was just their thing. They had to play the set before they played the set to make sure that they were in the pocket. And we were listening, and we were dancing, and we were like, wow, these guys are really cool, and tonight we get to see them, and we were feeling very festive. So Jack Irons, our drummer, Flea, and myself decided that we would pay homage to their greatness by dancing naked across the front of the stage during one of their more stellar numbers. And we had the idea that, you know, we were all on the same page, meaning the Ramones and us, but it turns out we did the naked dance across the front of the stage, and we had fun, and then we jumped off. We didn't linger, we didn't outstay our welcome, we just kind of paraded naked. And afterwards, we were pretty crushed because we found out the band now hated us, because we didn't know that they had an aesthetic, that they were very true to a formula, a set of rules, and they really didn't include us being naked on the stage with them in the rule book.
To me, Ramones is it's like it's like if you boiled down rock music to like the main elements, that's what's left. You know, just like it couldn't get any more basic. It's just like guitars, no extra stuff, leather jackets, blue jeans, and you know, that's what I like about them. They could plug in and play anywhere, and it would sound exactly the same. They were funny. I mean, to tour with them because they were so. Two things which are completely the opposite, but they were so exactly like you expect, and so completely different in just their individual personalities. But the way they were was so perfect because you could tell what they did was real. It was a lot of times you meet people and like, oh, it's so fake, this thing they've concocted, but they totally were what they seemed to be. But I mean, a lot of times people think that, oh, they're these stupid guys, but they weren't. I mean, they're all, you know, super smart, funny guys. Like, you know, the joke was not on them. I think the reason their music endures is just, it's like any great rock and roll music, whether it's Elvis or the Beatles, because they're good songs, you know. Maybe sometimes the production value is suspect on certain things, but it doesn't matter. They're great songs, and that's all that matters. You know, they're short, they're catchy to the point. They do everything in 2.5 minutes a song needs to do. There's no filler or waste. There's nothing about it that seems dated, like, oh, God, some crap from the 70s. It's not like, you know, Boston or something. You know, it's just so simple, but well done simple, not just, you know, so I don't know, it's timeless. I mean, they didn't look like they fit in their time period, so they always stayed timeless. I got involved with the record just by being friends with Johnny. Me and Johnny have been friends now for about 8 years. Ever since, you know, when we met on tour, we became good friends and stayed good friends ever since. And once the record started coming up, he called me, just asked me to get involved and help put it together. So that's how it happened. Well, I mean, the Ramones are funny because everyone knows who they are. I mean, I've never met someone who goes, Ramones, I've never heard of them. I mean, it's like, and the songs are so present, like if you go to any sporting event, you're going to hear Blitzkrieg Bop over the system always or something. Well, I mean, the whole point, I just hope it's just a fitting tribute, because that's all it was really supposed to do. You know what I mean? And that's why we wanted to make the record so good, just so that for such a great band, and I mean, they got in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and now finally, but it seems like all at once, everyone's finally going like, oh, what a great band. The record really shows the influence the band's had, because it's such a wide range of people. I mean, if you can get, like you say, Kiss and Tom Waits both together admitting how great the Ramones are, I mean, it's perfect. It's like 24 pages of photos no one's ever seen that we got out of Arturo Vega's files that he just had kicking around for 30 years almost, I guess, or whatever, 25 years. So it's worth it just for the package. Yeah, once the acts started coming in, and once you've got, like, U2 and Metallica and all these people, you're like, now how do you sum it up? Just some Joe Blow guy writes liner notes that nobody wants to read, and then we thought, like, well, Stephen King always obviously loved the Ramones with Pet Sematary, so yeah, we just contacted him, and he did it.
The spirit and what they were doing when they came around. They kind of, a lot of people credit them with starting a new kind of music and a new scene. They always had a classic look to them that seems to have lasting impact. Just their kind of icons. But their music was just simple and fun, and just kind of, I don't know, it just represents something that is young and that people could relate to for a long time. So it was a total thrill to be involved in this project. First of all, it was like so many great artists on the record. It was like Tom Waits and U2 and the Pretenders and Rancid, and it goes on and on. I was just like, to be involved in it was like, it was really wild. But also to get to meet and hang out with Johnny and Linda, super cool. At first, I remember being kind of worried about it in a way. Like, I'm like, I don't know, because the songs hold up so well as they are. It's like, some people might wonder like, why mess with them, But once I did it, it was so much fun to do. It's kind of fun to take a classic song and give it a new spin, even though my version's pretty straight. But yeah, it was a thrill, totally. Of course, it was an honor to be involved. I had fun doing it. We did it at a studio in Venice, California. I had a buddy of mine who lives in New York come in to produce it, named Don Fleming. I know he's a huge Ramones fan. And I was like, you gotta come out and get the tones up for this song. So we did that in a day and a half, maybe 2 days actually. And I'm happy with the way it turned out. Happy to be involved, and I hope it sells millions of copies.
This is a great tribute record to us. It's just great to see these bands all do Ramones songs. I can't believe it. I mean, it's just it's such an honor that every one of them would be willing to want to do this. We got most of the best bands out there doing this stuff, and to see that they all cared. When we were out there in the 80s, we didn't feel like anyone cared. And not until right at the end there, the last couple of years, when we started to play some shows with White Zombie, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, all of a sudden we started to feel like, wow, people care about us. And people go, that's silly, you should have knew that. But we didn't know that. We never knew anyone cared. We were such in our own world. So to see all these bands care, and be happy to be doing a Ramones song, it's great. When the project started, the first ones that I got to agree were Eddie Vedder, Rob Zombie, Chili Peppers, and Marilyn Manson, and those were the first ones that we got. And then from there, I just kept adding. You know, we came up with the Green Days and Offsprings, and then record company would suggest certain people. Later on, Garbage got mentioned. I ran it by, I think, you know, Eddie and John from Frusciante and Rob, and they all said, "Oh no, they're good. Put them on," and they did a great version. And just kept adding people to the very end, and at the very end, we got Kiss at the right near the end, and Pete, Yorn, and Rooney at the end. No, it's just so nice that these people would wanting to do this. Before it started, I didn't know if anyone would want to do it. So, you know, and then all of a sudden it started becoming, wow, everybody's saying, yeah, sure.
I thought we could do it something like sitting here, nothing to do, sitting here thinking only of you, but you never get down to that, you'll never get down to that. Oh, and then the beginning of it goes like, oh, oh, oh.